Following the combined effort that brought down the massive space kaiju, Okarun cautiously approached its unconscious body, searching for one of his golden balls. But instead of treasure, he discovered a girl lying inside. Shocked that the kaiju had been nothing more than a suit piloted by someone, he barely had time to process the revelation before the girl suddenly regained consciousness and, without warning, kissed him. It was at that exact moment Momo arrived at the scene, her eyes widening in disbelief as she caught them. Confusion and shock twisted across her face, but instinct overtook hesitation. In a blur, Momo lashed out with a flying kick that sent the girl tumbling, freeing Okarun from her hold. Fueled by her outrage, she pressed forward to deliver a harsher lesson, convinced the stranger was yet another alien intruder. The girl tried to speak, but her words were strange, muddled, and utterly incomprehensible. Momo only grew more irritated, dismissing her attempts with clenched fists and narrowed eyes. Okarun quickly stepped in, urging her to calm down and at least listen to the girl first, insisting they might learn something about the golden ball. But Momo, still seething, rejected his plea outright and accused him of defending the girl because of that kiss. Stunned, Okarun scrambled to explain himself, insisting it wasn't what she thought. Yet, without meaning to, he blurted that he was only shaken up because the one who kissed him was such a beauty. The words hit harder than any blow, and Momo's anger flared brighter. Her expression turned cold as she declared she wanted nothing to do with the new girl, then stormed away before Okarun could say more. Panicked, Okarun called out after her, his voice cracking as tears welled up, but before the moment could spiral further, Kinta shoved his way between them. He reminded them sharply that this was no time for petty quarrels. They still had to figure out how to communicate with the girl. Their search soon led them to a quiet farm where Mr. Shrimp greeted them with curiosity, his gaze shifting to the unfamiliar face in their company. Okarun explained their problem, that the girl spoke a language they couldn't understand. Mr. Shrimp considered this and then presented a peculiar solution. A translator device shaped like a comical nose disguise. Though far from ideal, it proved effective enough. Okarun wasted no time introducing himself, and when he asked for her name, the girl answered clearly for the first time, saying her name was Vamola. The group lit up at finally hearing something they could understand, though Okarun pressed further and asked why she had come to Earth. The translator sputtered and garbled her words, but enough slipped through for him to piece it together. Vamola had come seeking a strong opponent to fight, and if defeated, she would marry that person. To her eyes, Okarun fit that role. Before he could fully react, Kinta immediately inserted himself, loudly claiming credit since he had been the one piloting the mecha. Okarun backed his claim, clarifying that he had only given support. But even with the misunderstanding settled, Vamola stubbornly clung to her belief, throwing her arms around Okarun in a tight embrace. Okarun's face flushed deep red as he stammered for Mr. Shrimp to provide them a translator as well. Unfortunately, Mr. Shrimp shook his head, admitting he didn't have another one ready. Still, he assured them that by the next time they visited, he would have it properly fixed, making future communication much smoother. With nothing more achieved in speaking to the new girl, they returned to the Ayase residence, where everyone gathered around the dinner table for takoyaki. Vamola joined them too, much to Ira's irritation, as she questioned why an alien who had almost killed them earlier was now eating with them. Okarun explained that Mr. Shrimp was still working on the translator, and until it was fixed, they couldn't properly clear up the situation with Vamola, meaning she had no choice but to live with them for now. Momo, still bothered by Vamola's sudden attempt at Okarun, cut in with a sharp reminder that there was no misunderstanding. She didn't trust her at all. Okarun tried to calm things down by pointing out that the issue came from Vamola's side, since she was looking for a husband strong enough to defeat her. Somehow, she had come under the impression that he had beaten her, which explained the unexpected kiss. That only made Ira and Momo more annoyed as they quickly corrected Okarun, reminding him that they were the ones who had actually defeated Vamola. Okarun accepted their correction without resistance, admitting he knew that, but repeated that until the translator was repaired, they couldn't really communicate with her or know what she truly meant. As if to cut through the tension, Vamola tapped Okarun on the shoulder and pointed toward the takoyaki, seemingly asking for more. Okarun quickly plated a few for her, and Vamola ate them with such visible delight that it made him wonder about what other things she usually ate, and sparked a curiosity to know more about her. But his gaze drifted toward Momo, who, clearly jealous, stuffed her mouth with food while glaring in silence. Okarun, unsure of how to break the ice, grew more confused when Momo suddenly got up and sat right beside him, giving Vamola a frown. Vamola answered it with a smile, and soon both girls were chewing aggressively on takoyaki, while Okarun, stuck in the middle, tried to make sense of what was going on. Later that night, Momo lay flat on the floor, groaning from stomach discomfort and blaming herself for overeating. Okarun reminded her that he had already warned her, but she brushed off his concern and accused him of being the reason she ate too much. Flustered by the accusation, Okarun tried to argue back, only for Momo to suddenly change the subject and ask if he had found a golden ball in Vamola's possession. He admitted he wasn't sure yet, since the communication barrier made it difficult to get details from her. Still distrustful, Momo insisted that Vamola was their enemy, warning Okarun not to drop his guard just because of that kiss. Surprised, Okarun asked if she was still mad, assuring her that although Vamola had caught him off guard, he hadn't lowered his guard and everything would be fine. Before Momo could say more, Gigi's voice rang from outside, urgently calling for Okarun to come out and see something. In the front yard, Gigi and Kinta were already peeking inside Vamola's kaiju suit, amazed at the head-up display projected inside. Overcome with excitement, Gigi begged Vamola to let him try it and even managed to trick her into giving a thumbs up, which he immediately took as permission and jumped in. Vamola tried to protest, but by then it was too late. Gigi was already inside and overwhelmed by the experience. It felt like peering straight into Jarvis itself. The next morning, chaos erupted at the Ayase residence when Momo learned that Vamola would be joining her school as a transfer student. Outraged, she argued with her grandmother, pointing out that Vamola was an alien and insisting it was a bad idea. But Seiko stood firm, stating that they couldn't leave a freeloader alone in the house. Left with no choice, Momo sighed in frustration and went to her room, searching for clothes to get Vamola ready. She handed her a set and told her to change out of the kaiju suit into something normal, even using hand signals to make sure she understood. But instead of following along, Vamola simply placed the kaiju headpiece on, annoying Momo further. Suddenly, the horn on her suit lit up and began scanning Momo's appearance, startling her into thinking she was about to transform into a giant. To Momo's shock, Vamola replicated her school uniform through the kaiju suit, and the likeness was uncanny. With no time to question it further, they quickly left for school. On the way, Momo asked if she could also change her head, but Vamola muttered cryptic words that seemed to suggest she couldn't. Changing the subject, Momo drew a quick picture of a golden ball and asked if Vamola had one. After a moment, Vamola reached behind the head of her kaiju suit and pulled out an orb. Confused, Momo asked if that was the golden ball, only to watch Vamola place it back inside and partially remove her suit. The orb immediately glowed with a golden light, raising even more questions in Momo's mind. But with Vamola looking just as puzzled, Momo sighed and realized there was no use trying without Mr. Shrimp's translator. She also considered asking Turbo Granny to examine the suspicious orb, but when her eyes caught the time on a nearby clock, she gasped in panic, realizing they were going to be late. With no choice, she grabbed Vamola and urged her to hurry as they dashed for school. Shortly after, they reached an abandoned district that Momo's grandmother had strictly forbidden her from trespassing. But with the clock ticking and school drawing close, the shortest route lay straight through it. So Momo, though hesitant, decided to take the risk. Before stepping inside, she performed a small good luck ritual along with Vamala and then hurried into the ruined area. The streets were littered with cracked walls and broken signs, every shadow stretching unnervingly as they ran. Suddenly, Vamala stopped and pointed ahead. Momo followed her gaze and froze. There, standing tall in the gloom, was a terrifying figure, a yokai woman with an abnormally wide mouth, clutching a mirror as she leisurely applied lipstick. The spirit tilted her head and asked the girls if she looked pretty. Momo instantly shouted "Pomode" twice in succession, but instead of disappearing, the spirit flew into a rage. With blinding speed, she struck Momo, hurling her into the side of a crumbling building. The word had clearly enraged her, and she hissed a warning not to let Momo's mouth open again. At that moment, Vamala transformed into her giant kaiju form and charged, landing a heavy punch across the yokai's face. But the spirit didn't even flinch. Stunned, Vamala unleashed a furious barrage of blows, raining down fists, only for the yokai to mock her, sneering that such an ugly creature only made her own beauty stand out more. Then, with a sudden move, the yokai seized Vamala and slammed her into the ground with a brutal suplex. Just as she finished, another voice rose from the sidelines. Momo had recovered from the earlier blow, clutching her stomach but forcing herself up as she called the spirit by name, the slit-mouthed woman. She explained aloud that chanting pomade 10 times could exorcise her. Determined, Momo began the ritual, but before she could complete it, the woman thrust her hand through her mirror, and it reappeared beneath Momo, punching her skyward in a single devastating strike. Enraged by her insolence, she reminded Momo she had already been warned not to speak that word. Her fury grew, and she commanded the countless mirror shards scattered around to rise. Each shard reflected her image, and from every reflection, her hands reached out, clawing toward Momo. Panicked, Momo leapt frantically to dodge, but one of the hands managed to seize her leg. Before she could be dragged down, Vamala rushed back in and wrapped her giant arms around the spirit, holding her tightly. Momo shouted to Vamala, begging her to repeat pomade to banish the yokai, but Vamala, unable to understand, only tightened her grip. The slit-mouthed woman didn't resist. Instead, she hugged Vamala back with a twisted fondness, calling the girl her favorite, before raising her mirror high and sucking Vamala straight into it. Momo gasped as her ally vanished. The yokai smirked and warned her that if she dared to chant pomade again, she would lose her friend forever. Momo snapped back, claiming she had never trusted Vamala to begin with, though the idea of losing to a yokai cut deeper than she cared to admit. Resolving to fight, she hurled an insult, calling the spirit ugly. The word struck deep. The woman shrieked in denial, thrashing and rampaging, while Momo dashed wildly to keep ahead of her fury. In the chaos, she managed to snatch away the mirror clutched in the yokai's hands. The spirit panicked at the sight of her treasure stolen and raged all the harder, demanding it back. Desperately, Momo tried to use her ability on the mirror, hoping to free Vamala, but nothing happened. Instead, she accidentally caught a glimpse of the woman's reflection in the glass. That was all the opening the yokai needed. Her powers surged, and Momo was suddenly dragged inside. The mirror fell clattering to the ground, its surface now showing both Momo and Vamala trapped within. The spirit sneered down at them, calling them ugly, before uncapping her lipstick and scribbling over Momo's face. But when she turned the mirror to admire her own reflection, she realized her view was blocked. Both Momo and Vamala pressed their faces against the glass, twisting their features into grotesque grins. Vamala even removed her kaiju headpiece and exaggerated every silly expression, mimicking Momo shamelessly. The sight drove the yokai into a frenzy. Unable to see her own beauty, she screamed, her frustration boiling over until she hurled the mirror to the ground, shattering the illusion and flinging both girls out of its depths. Breathless but free, the girls staggered to their feet as the spirit turned back to the mirror, once again praising her reflection. But her peace shattered when she realized the two were gone. Frantically scanning the ruins, she found nothing except an echo. Soft at first but rising, the dreaded chant of pomade whispering from every corner. Her head whipped around, her hands bursting from shards, smashing walls and mirrors in desperation as the voices multiplied. The word reverberated endlessly. At the 10th echo, her form finally cracked and burst apart into countless fragments, scattering like glittering dust. In the silence that followed, two figures emerged from hiding. Until then, Momo and Vamola had concealed themselves within the transparent form of the kaiju suit, repeating the cursed word unseen until the spirit's body collapsed. Finally free, the two wasted no time fleeing the ruins before anything else appeared. Once they were safely away, both sighed in relief. Momo thanked Vamola for her help, admitting that without her, things could have turned far worse. Vamola responded with a heartfelt embrace, holding Momo close as if reluctant to let go. Moved by the gesture, Momo eased her doubts and chose to trust Vamola from now on. Together, they hurried back toward school and barely made it in time. At the gates, Ira and Okarun were waiting with questioning looks, demanding an explanation for their delay. Momo offered only a vague reply, saying they had been caught up in real trouble. Before further questions could be pressed, their teacher appeared, announcing that Vamola would join Class C since all other classes were full, and Okarun himself would be responsible for guiding her studies. The decision drew immediate protests from both Momo and Ira, but the teacher refused to reconsider. Their frustration only deepened when they remembered who ruled Okarun's class, the notoriously strict representative, Rin Sawaki, who never tolerated visitors. Inside Class C, the students immediately crowded around Vamola, fussing over her and firing off endless questions. Everyone was eager to learn more about the mysterious transfer student and speculated wildly about where she might be from. Vamola, however, answered every single question with the same word, takoyaki. The puzzled classmates exchanged glances, and after a brief discussion, somehow concluded she must be from India. While the chatter swirled, Rin quietly pulled Okarun aside and pressed him about his connection with Vamola. Okarun explained that she was simply staying at Momo's place as part of a homestay, nothing more. Yet Rin's skeptical gaze lingered as she remarked that Vamola seemed unusually attached to him. Before Okarun could respond, Kinta barged in loudly, declaring that Vamola was attached to him instead. The class rep scowled, calling him a liar and insisting she only trusted Okarun's word, since he didn't seem like the type to lie. Stung by the remark, Kinta burst into protest, boasting that he once piloted a mecha to save the world and daring her to confirm it with Okarun. To Rin's shock, Okarun reluctantly admitted it was true. She stared at him in disbelief before running out of the room in exasperation, snapping that if Okarun was backing up Kinta's nonsense, then he too must be lying. The argument was cut short when Vamola suddenly pointed at Okarun and cheerfully called him boyfriend. Silence swallowed the room, Okarun nearly choking on his breath as he demanded to know who had taught her such a word. His answer arrived instantly when he noticed Momo, Gigi, and Ira standing at the doorway, their expressions making it obvious who was responsible. They called him outside, and without delay, Okarun and Kinta followed. Once outside, Momo wasted no time cornering Okarun, demanding why he hadn't noticed her sooner. She caught him in a headlock, accusing him of being a pervert, while Ira and Vamola quickly rushed forward to restrain her. When the tension finally cooled, Okarun calmly asked what Momo had wanted to tell him. Momo explained bluntly that Vamola had a golden ball and she suspected it might belong to him. At first, Okarun couldn't believe it, But Vamola transformed into her kaiju suit and demonstrated what she had shown Momo earlier, revealing the glowing orb within. Everyone present was stunned. Okarun studied it carefully, noting that it resembled more of a battery than his missing ball. Kinta quickly chimed in, reasoning that the entire design of the suit seemed to revolve around the ball's presence. When pressed on why he thought so, Kinta explained that if Vamola had only recently acquired the orb, it wouldn't make sense for the suit to already have a compartment perfectly shaped for it. Momo suggested it might have been modified later, but Kinta disagreed, pointing out that the suit's inner workings appeared far too advanced to have been tampered with. According to him, Vamola must have had the golden ball from the very beginning. As the debate went on, Momo's attention flicked to a group of nearby girls, whispering and stealing glances at them. Realizing how suspicious their little gathering must look, she quickly urged everyone to disperse. After all, it was hard to explain a mixed bunch of students loudly discussing family jewels in the courtyard. Later that evening, Momo confessed everything to Granny Seiko and apologized alongside Vamola for their mistake. Seiko grew furious, reminding her she had already warned against entering the ruins, while Turbo Granny was amazed the two had even made it out alive. Momo insisted she had dealt with the slit-mouthed woman by chanting pomade 10 times. At the mention of the yokai's name, Seiko sighed heavily and explained that the pomade spell only expelled evil spirits temporarily. It never banished them for good. Each repetition weakened the effect further, which was precisely why the ruins had remained untouched for so long. No one had ever truly defeated the slit-mouthed woman, whose real name was Reiko Kashima. The revelation left Momo shocked, but before she could ask more, Seiko gave her a stern warning. For the next week, she was forbidden from stepping outside past 10 at night, no matter what. Even if someone she knew called her name, she was not to respond, otherwise Reiko would find her. That night, when everyone had gone to bed, Seiko entered Momo's room with unusual severity. She instructed her to cover every mirror and warned her not to open the door under any circumstance until 5 in the morning. Momo tried to brush it off, remarking that she would simply sleep through the night, but Seiko shook her head and insisted it wouldn't be that easy. The warning carried such weight that Momo obeyed, uneasily lying on her bed and telling Vamola to do the same as they drifted off to sleep. Hours crawled by, the silence of the house thick and oppressive, and despite her efforts, Momo couldn't fall asleep. Midnight approached, and her restless thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice calling softly from outside the window. Her heart skipped. It was Okarun. He explained gently that Seiko had told him everything about the spirit, and he had come to return a manga she had lent him. Momo urged him to leave, saying they could talk tomorrow, but he insisted he would stay and keep guard so she could rest peacefully. She argued again, worried for his safety, until his next words made her heart pound. He claimed he wanted to stay out of love. Momo's cheeks flushed at the sudden confession, and she asked why he would say something so bold. He answered in an awkward voice, admitting he wasn't good with words and wishing her to sleep tight. Torn between doubt and temptation, Momo rose from her bed and reached for the door. But before turning the handle, she asked casually if Okarun had plans with Gigi the next day. The reply came instantly. He said there were no such plans with Mr. Gigi. The way the name was spoken froze Momo. Okarun never referred to Gigi that way. Her suspicion hardened into dread. She stepped back from the door, her pulse racing as she understood who was outside. It wasn't Okarun. It was Reiko Kashima. Her voice continued to call, mimicking Okarun's tone perfectly, urging Momo to open the door for just a moment. Momo clutched her blanket tightly and forced herself back into bed, refusing to respond. But the voice didn't stop. Its warmth drained away, replaced by something sharp and grating, like glass scraping across stone. It no longer came from just the window, but echoed from every corner of the house, pounding in Momo's ears relentlessly. Meanwhile, far away, an abandoned building had become the stage for something far darker. 3 Serpos stood guard when an unfamiliar presence arrived, one they had never seen before on Earth. One of them warned the intruder that this territory wasn't theirs to cross. Soon, a figure emerged from the far end of the hallway. In an instant, 2 Serpos were crushed mercilessly, their bodies collapsing like broken dolls. The third was seized by the head, its struggles cut short as the cold, alien voice declared that whatever they possessed now belonged to it. A sickening crunch followed, and the last Serpos fell limp. As the figure straightened, the air around it thickened with menace. From the shadows behind, multiple glowing eyes flickered to life, revealing a swarm of extraterrestrial beings now gathered in silence. That's it for the first episode of Dandadan Season 3. Stay tuned, more episodes are on the way. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss episode 2 when it drops. I'll see you soon with a brand new chapter.